Gege, first you take my son from me, possibly, and now you're going to take my daughter? What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. I do it too. Have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And fun fact. Y'all, think about this. 2 chapters ago, we were talking about takoyaki. We were at a taco bar. Dabra was about to get himself a calm little jujutsu baddie. 2 chapters ago. And here we are. First page of chapter 13, acceptance. First page. And my baby, he got double pumped and he's laid out. I didn't even know this go like, why I gotta do my baby like Gege? It's not even been it's literally 13 chapters. Why do I care so much? Because that's good character writing. Like, ultimately, this is why I always say it really isn't about how much the character appears. It's what you do with the character within their appearances. Because Cross hasn't even been a thing in my mind for longer than what? 13 weeks? Have we been on break? Like, I don't know. I feel like it hasn't really been that long. Yet I actually feel something. And I genuinely do not want my baby boy to go. I'm calling him my baby boy entirely unironically. I birthed him. I know he had parents. I birthed him. That's my son. And now I have to look at my son. Laid out, all 3 eyes closed, hair down, fried. And then there's my other son. My other the realest baby of baby boys. And he's looking at the body of his brother laid out because he got double pumped by some random, a guy who got the name last chapter. He was just itching and scratching for smoke, and I'm glad he got it. Because my glorious, handsome, legendary, juicy, short woman loving, I'm still not sure I agree with him on that, short woman loving King Dabra at least got half a lick back. And like, here's the thing. In the end, we had 4 main characters in JJK. We had the main trio and then Gojo. And so far, or not really so far, by the end of JJK, only one of them actually perished. Yuji made it, Nobara made it, Megumi made it. So, like, it's not out of Gege's wheelhouse to just bang, especially considering JJK Modulo is supposed to be short run, right? Before I was like, well, you know what? The pace of the story, the way it's going, doesn't really seem like we could really end in like, what? If it's 3 volumes, it's 7 chapters per volume, or like 8 chapters, like max is like what, 24 chapters? Maybe it's a little longer, but like if it's really like a short run series, like we only, by the time the last chapter, we only really had like what, 9 chapters left, maybe 10. I was like, the pace we're going at, and then boom, literally boom, 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 and here we are. That's insane to me. And the insane thing to me though, the most core insane thing to me is that I care, right? Like it is. Ask me 3 months ago if I care at all about this. Like, there's no way. I do, and that's impressive. That's a testament to Gege's writing, and this is just Gege's writing. Like, they're just cooking. So let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into chapter 13. Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. Acceptance. And oh boy, I'm struggling to accept it. But with it being the case, we see that Cross is laid out. Seemingly coma. I'm not sure if he's meant to be comatose here, or if he's just, asleep and fighting for his life, as he did literally get double pumped. Impossible vital organs, as we'll go on to find out later in the chapter. But with it being the case, we naturally see Maru. Well, obviously, we're in the future, right? We clearly time skip from the end of last chapter to get to this point in this chapter. But with it being the case, we've time skipped to the point where Maru is back from the mission he had with Yuka and Tsurugi. And naturally, upon seeing his brother laid out like this, it's like, what? Why did this happen to Cross? And I'm not sure if this gentleman has a name. He's one of Osuki's friends. I only know him as that. But Spiral Osuki's friend says, they thought he was going to go for a sword, and they shot him. And naturally, Maru hears that and is like, that doesn't even make sense. Cross was going to draw his sword? And Osuki, and this is the one thing I respect the most, right? Osuki and Cross, Osuki and Maru, Osuki and Jabaloma, Osuki, even, and we'll see it later on in the chapter, Osuki and Dabura. Fundamentally different people, right? I think that's an important thing. They're, at least in terms of Cross and Maru and Osuki, at least they're all Romelian. And we know Osuki is very prideful of his people, right? But in that case, Osuki still stands fundamentally opposed to Jabaloma, Dabura, Cross, Jabaloma, Dabura, Cross, and Maru. He stands pretty fundamentally opposed to them. Oh, with Elder Boro and everything, he's like, I don't really rock with this. But he has such a strong opinion and a strong understanding of Cross's character that he doesn't even entertain it. He says, of course not. Because he knows that Cross would never have been about it. Or not even not been about it, right? In fact, he says the opposite. As he says, of course not. If Cross really wanted to fight, that Scrubs Royal Loco would have never even touched him. And that's that level of respect, right? Because ultimately, and I think that's a true thing to human nature, right? There are some fundamental disagreements I have with friends of mine. Like we have certain things, and not like big fundamental disagreements. There are certain things if we disagree, we're not being friends. Like, that's just the law of the universe, right? I got my standards. But, there's some people who look me directly in the eyes and be like, ultimately, I just think so-and-so's kind of mid. And I almost need to reach across the table and just grab him by the neck. I have a friend, and this is going to be oddly specific, so for the little crossover between JJK Modulo fans and each of the Witch fans, here's the thing. One of my friends looked me directly in the face and said, yeah, I think Deskros is like a 3 out of 10 at best. I almost whipped that man's throat out in the same moment. He's one of my greatest friends. But I almost ripped his throat out. Because it's a fundamental difference between the two of us. You know who his favorite is? Togeist. I want to beat him. I think he was messing with me in that moment. I think he still messing with me to this day. But at the same time, his girlfriend actually kind of looks like Togeist. So I don't blame him. But still, regardless. All that being said, you can have a fundamental disagreement with somebody, but you can still know their character. And I like that's being shown with Osuki, where he clearly disagrees with Cross and Jabaloma and Maru and Dabura. And he will go on to disagree with Dabura and his intentions and motivations, even his very existence here in this very same chapter. But he respects who they are, and he knows of their craft and level. So he's like, no, of course not. If you really want to fight, he's way too built for that. It's that his guard was down. If anything, he was touching it out of habit. It's like fidgeting. Except, even still, he did not deserve to get blacked for fidgeting. Blacked? Why did I say that? But still, regardless, it didn't deserve to happen. And we see that Jabaloma says, Cross was searching for the wisest decision, putting Rommel first, even at the end. And there is a sad resignation to Jabaloma, right? Jabaloma, like, admittedly, I don't know how Gege did it, pack so much into all these characters in such a short time, but you can tell that there's a very sad resignation to Jabaloma. Jabaloma already lost his daughter. That was a major point. And it's why Cross respected Jabaloma a lot in the first place. The idea that he's already lost his daughter, and he still is focused on this idea of connection and working with others. He's still future focused. But in this, even though Cross isn't gone yet, he's already like, even at the end, he's moved on in a way already from Cross, which is really, really sad. And we see that Osuki, if anything, is like, stop talking like he's dying. Wait. Okay, good, I didn't accidentally end recording. He ain't dead yet. It took a lot more than this to bring down a smart fiend like Cross. And once again, I like that. Osuki doesn't like Cross. He doesn't like Maru. He has a very distinct disrespect for them. But he's like, no. The kid who came and punched me in the face in Dura's honor is not going out to 2 pumps like that. He may be down, but do not count him out. But notably, as Osuki looks very, very strongly, you can see him sweating. Because even he understands this is extremely hard to recover from. And on top of that, look at Jabaloma's face. It's the importance of that resignation. I understand Jabaloma's character so much where he's like, it's over. He's fried. Deep fried. And notably, this is the last time we see Maru in the chapter. 2 pages deep, we do not see Maru again for the rest of the chapter. I think it's interesting, right? Maru is definitely a character who believed, who had hope, who wanted to facilitate connection. More than Cross even did, right? It took Yuka reaching out to Cross, reaching across the island, revealing a secret she hasn't even told her own brother, that allowed Cross to even begin to have faith in humanity. And it was Maru who once stood in opposition to that. Not even opposition to that. He stood in opposition to the idea of not having faith in humanity. He's like, this can work. This experiment, this test, we can do it together. We shall go together. And I think, in a way, it speaks volumes. Because it's like, I know, to some degree, Maru, even if he shouldn't, probably feels guilty. Right? Especially considering, remember, he's the older twin. And admittedly, I'm not a twin, but I am an older brother. Anything that ever happens to my own younger brother, I would feel guilt about it, even if I had nothing to do with it. I've the amount of times I got righteously angry over that boy, even though I've had nothing to do with the scenario, and sometimes even when he's in the wrong, it's an innate brotherly instinct. And I can't imagine what would be going through Maru's head as he just lays there and possibly watches his own brother slowly fade away. Over a people that his brother didn't even initially trust. It was the bonds that Maru had built that even put Cross in the scenario where he would end up getting Blake down. And there probably is like a deep uncertainty that exists within Maru because of that. And once again, the character contrast, the character struggle, it works so well. I'm telling you, KK hopped in the pot and just kept cooking. And speaking of cooking, we get to see a little something. As we cut back to Earth, and specifically Jujutsu headquarters, presumably, as Tsurugi naturally asks, Usami is what? And we see this woman, who I don't think gets a name this chapter. I don't think she gets a name. Once again, that's fine, though. She's essentially the Shoko of the modern era, except clearly a lot less capable than Shoko. If not a lot less capable, a lot less confident in her capabilities. And she says, I'm so sorry. I can't neutralize it with my reverse curse technique. And the recoil from his curse speech, well, it's like he got hit with a really strong curse in return. Which, and admittedly, I'll talk about Usami in a second once we get to it. We're going to get to it. But we do find out, like I said, there is a modern external RCT specialist, which is good. At least there is one in this era as well. Though clearly their capabilities aren't on the level of like a Yuta or a Sukuna or a Rika. I'd say Shoko as well. But like, definitely not those three. And definitely not Shoko either. Well, but then again, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. It's really because of the specific circumstances that Usami took the damage. Because you'll see here that Usami is deep fried. Like, legitimately looking at that man, it looks like, in fact, I feel bad for anyone who has trypophobia. In fact, I think I have like a weird mild case of trypophobia, because sometimes I look at holes a little bit too long, like holes just dotted together, and it really bothers me, which is funny. Like knowing the origins of trypophobia and being like, that's like an instinctual thing. That's really interesting to me that I have that. I'm like, what is triggering that? But he's literally like peppered in holes. You can see he's lost a lot of weight. His cheeks are hollow and sunken in. He has a breathing mask. His whole forehead and eyes are covered with a wet towel. It's like really, really bad. And in fact, you can even look what he's wearing. He's not even wearing, it doesn't even look like he has a blanket on. It's like he has like binding seals over him, tight rope that's bound over his body. He is done horrifically. And naturally, Tsurugi's hearing this. And you can even see Tsurugi's in some type of denial, right? Like he's like, no. But there's no way. Usami is a grade 1 sorcerer. That's literally impossible. And we see this woman, who also doesn't get a name. Like, I don't know. The one thing I'm like, these characters aren't getting names, and I feel like they should have names. But we see that this woman says, so am I. But if I had to face Dabra, my only choice would be to run. And depending on his true nature, I might even have to off myself. And I assume this isn't the case, like, she would just automatically boom herself. We don't know anything about this woman's capabilities, but very specifically, I'm assuming she means, like, she would have to do anything to Dabura. She would have to make, like, a death-binding vow. In the same vein that Choso, in order to protect Yuji, had to make a death-binding vow in order to create a blood bubble that would survive Furnace, and then, what's another example of a death-binding vow? Well, not even a death-binding, like, well, no, specifically in terms of death binding vows. So let's say, technically, remember Miwa not being able to wield swords, like, because she put everything in, that was a binding vow. In the same vein, that's not really a death binding vow, though. I'm trying to think. There was another one. There's another one in original JJK that I'm thinking of. Does Yuki's count? I guess Yuki's Black Hole technically counts as, like, a death binding vow, where like, she just puts everything in the line. It's like, I'm gonna die anyway. Boom, and puts it all in. And even then, as we've seen, one, that they don't understand Dabra's true nature. Dabra is still transcendent of them, as this woman says. And two, sometimes death binding vows still aren't enough. Kenny lived. Of course, Yuki was suppressed in Black Hole, but Kenny lived. Didn't really matter. Kinjaku just in flying in. It's Kenny both times with like the extreme binding vows where when someone puts everything on the line. But once again, Kenny lived even and just knocked and broke her sword. So even characters of a certain level, once faced with like what might as well be living gods, are like, no, I can't. I literally can't do anything. As this woman says, his power can't be measured by the sorcerer ranking system. He's a walking calamity. And admittedly, it still is really hard to tell what this actually means in terms of, like, original series scaling. Because Sukuna was described as the exact same thing. Something almost transcendental of the system itself. So, Sukuna versus Dabra, never gonna happen. I'd love to know. Like, in Gege's mind, I wonder who he has as strong. I'd assume it's Sukuna. Like, I feel like Gege pushes very, very hard in the original series to say, like, Sukuna is the pinnacle of what this universe has to offer. Sukuna is still technically better built for sorcery than Dabra. He's really around the same size as Dabra, but obviously bigger because, like, the wider build and the extra arms. It's like, all the way, probably still Sukuna? But the way Dabra is getting glazed and does show off this chapter is very, very important. But at the same time, we have so little context for this era. Like, what happens or relative to the original era. Because they don't know enough about Sukuna. They know barely anything about him, so it's rough. But naturally, we see this coming from this grade 1 sorcerer be enough to, like, shock Tsurugi. And then we begin the flashback. And naturally, we continue right where we left off in last chapter, where Dabra simply asks, "What are you doing?" And then, of course, everyone turns and sees Dabra, and it's like, Dabra! Which, I do, one of the things I appreciate the most about JJK, in terms of how it portrays, like, the overwhelming power of certain entities, is that it shows us both, right? Like, it shows us this image, like, just Dabra seemingly radiating essentially an aura of death about him, right? Like, just being in Dabra's presence is enough that he feels like this. But looking at it, even in the real world, there's nothing there. His aura isn't flared up. He's not even really in a fighting stance. He's simply just standing there. But he has, like, it literally is the SpongeBob meme. He's just standing there, menacingly. And yet he's portrayed as this, like, once again, like a walking calamity, a living, breathing tornado that has a name and a face. And Sukuna gets that. Gojo even occasionally gets that, where it's just like these moments of, oh no, this being is transcendental of, like, everything I've ever seen. And half the time when they get those moments, they're just floating there. In the case of Gojo, they're just standing there. In the case of Sukuna, very specifically, the one that always comes to mind isn't even, like, obviously everyone goes to the Kashima one where he's hitting the pose with Kambutoke and he's walking forward and he's fully shaded out. The one that always comes to mind for me in terms of Sukuna's, like, oh, this guy's literally transcendental. It's when he stands up after he tells Jogo to move. It's specifically when Sukuna stands up and, like, hits the this. Like, I think he's, like, taking off a torn sleeve or something, and Jogo's like, yeah, I'm fried. And that's the exact same aura that Dabra has, and it just hits so different. But with it being the case, we see that Dabra is in fact here, and naturally, Usami's standing by and he's like, nobody move. Because obviously, he knows that, oh, we're fried. And even Mr. Yakamaru, you know, the man who basically, like, he's responsible. He's responsible for the degradation of human and samurai relations. It was going so well, it is literally his fault. And admittedly, I didn't put as much emphasis as I should have put on it last review. I definitely am in the camp that, like, it could entirely just be Yakamaru, right? Very specifically, I hinted at that maybe it was Mahito, like, you know, pushing forth the ideas of conflict between these two different peoples. As we know, Mahito feeds off of humanity's hatred, so if humanity has hatred for not just itself, but also on whole other species, it's going to raise the levels, and naturally, we know that Samurians are affected and feed into the whole curse energy system as well, so, like, it could literally just be a whole raising the level of hatred thing that Mahito could have been like, go ahead, up it. You know he ain't like that for up it on him. Blow his top, blow his back out, bro. But at the same time, I think it would be fitting if Mahito doesn't really have any involvement. If he's like, yeah, sure, go ahead and do it. Like, he's getting passively strong. He's not actively part of it. And it was just Yakamaru being stupid. Because, very specifically, Yakamaru being stupid for stupid reasons. Because, let's be honest, if there's one thing humans are really, really good at, it's being stupid for stupid reasons. So, Yakamaru just being an idiot, yeah, that works out. He even gets called an idiot this chapter by another person, which is very, very accurate, because it's literally his fault. This whole thing could have been resolved infinitely more peacefully. We would not be in the scenario we would be in at the end of the chapter if Yakamaru just had the slightest bit of decorum. Just the slightest bit of decorum, but always gonna get the slightest bit of something. And he says, you don't have to tell me that. Who the heck could move what muscle in front of that thing? Which 100% makes me believe that these guys could not handle Sukuna. Right, don't get me wrong, Dabra's supposed to be like an equal to Sukuna level threat, but they don't know what Sukuna is. They were never in the presence of Sukuna. I am convinced that these individuals could have never stood in that man's presence, because right now Dabra is releasing all this aura, and he's literally just standing there. And notably, he doesn't even look angry. He isn't looking. He's still very much. He is super Broly in that way, or base Broly from original Dragon Ball Z, where he's just looking. And I love this moment, right, where it's Osugi's friends who pick up Cross and just get running with him, and it's just simply the sight of Cross just. And Dabra looks with all three eyes. And I love that. I sincerely love that his two major eyes are pupilless. As he turns back and remembers his promise. And he simply repeats his question. After he remembers, I will protect the rebellions. He says, I said, what are you doing? And we see that Osuki goes on to perpetuate what is admittedly something that is wrong, right? And that is the most important. That is the important thing, right? Cursed spirits are not Kallions. They're just the closest thing to Kallions. It's like, what's a good example? What's an example of convergent evolution? Well, I went over this last review, but essentially the idea of whales and fish. If you don't know the difference between a mammal and a fish, you're gonna see a whale and you're going to see a fish and assume they are the exact same species. When really that's just a case of convergent evolution, where they just happen to evolve in similar environments but are fundamentally different. A whale is still a mammal and a fish is a fish. Like you see a great white shark and an orca whale next to each other. They have similar shapes, they have similar builds, they have teeth, but they are different species. And that's what it is with Kallions, essentially. Kallions are fundamentally different from curses in many ways, specifically the lack of physical forms. Well, to be fair, we don't know enough about how Kallions are manifested. That's the one thing we don't know. I don't think we have enough information on that. We don't know how Kallions are manifested, or if they truly are just fully naturally occurring and even predate the Sumerians entirely. We just don't have enough lore for that. But with that being the case, they are different from the lack of physical forms, and the fact that the witnessing of a cursed spirit perishing in comparison to a Kallion doesn't seem to be lethal, or at least cause any brain damage. In fact, it'll be a later point in this chapter where a certain someone's going to keep feeling them perish, and ultimately they're worried for him, but it's not actually that bad. Like, it doesn't really matter. So Osuki's saying the pests on Earth are Kallions. He's essentially pushing his agenda here, even though it's not the case. Though admittedly, for right now, I understand where Osuki's coming from, because remember, at the end of the day, as much as he does respect Cross, he still has an agenda to push. So he's trying to push his agenda for one, and obviously pushing his agenda with Dabra at the highest level right now in this high tension situation is still just an intelligent move for pushing the agenda. And also, it's like they're close enough that it matters. It doesn't matter if they're not exactly the same for him. It's the convergent evolution idea, except he's still very much attached to them. Especially since he can hear their voices, which is something that isn't consistent for, like, some curses can literally speak the human language, but, like, it's not consistent for all mindless beasts like cursed spirits to be able to speak, but it's clear that Osuki can hear all their voices. So he's likely half agenda pushing, half being genuine, where he just says they're Kallions, right? Like, sure, they aren't exactly, but they're close enough. And Jabaloma doesn't even deny or correct him. It's very specifically Jabaloma saying, and we ran into a bit of trouble, which is an accurate way to call Yakamaru. And Yakamaru suddenly forgetting who he stands before. Going from, you don't tell me that. Who the heck can move one muscle in front of that thing? Suddenly goes, that's not true! They're cursed spirits! They're not Kallions! I feel like we all know a Yakamaru who's just stupid, right? Like, and don't get me wrong, there are no Dabras, or Sukunas, or Gojos, or sorcerers in our world, right? But I very specifically remember an interaction that I had. I was hanging out with a couple of friends, and one of the friends is the one I mentioned before. 6'9", 270 pounds of pure muscle. And I mean like pure muscle. I mean like no matter what he's wearing, he could be wearing like the finest tailored suit, and you can see the build. And not only that, he has this look about him that, like, oh, that isn't just, like, that man knows how to fight. And of course I know that. And maybe some people aren't able to tell that. But very specifically, I remember someone trying to anger him. I was not in the scenario at first. I stepped away to go to the bathroom, and I came back, and there was this guy. He wasn't the smallest out there. Like, I think he was probably like my size, in fact, or like just a little bit shorter. But he was yelling in my friend's face, just going absolutely crazy, going absolutely bonkers. And notably, lucky for him, my friend does not believe in violence. He just knows how to do it. And I specifically remember him grabbing the guy by the shoulder and being like, whatever you want, you're not going to get it here. But if you do attempt to, I promise you will be handled to the full extent of my ability. Never in my days have I been more horrified of that man. And I know for a fact if he wanted to, he could run the fade of the entire friend group and probably lose, right? Like we're pretty big people in general. So, like, he's probably going to get tired eventually. But still, it doesn't matter. And also some of them, like, I don't know how to fight. But there are other people who are my size or bigger in our friend group who also know how to fight that aren't him. But still, regardless, that's, like, the level of fundamental non-situation reading that I think Yakamaru's in. My brother, you have just up Blick and double pumped the savior of the Samurians. One of them. The savior of the Rumelians. And even if you didn't, you just caused, not an international, an interplanetary cultural incident off the assumption of him reaching for a weapon. And you think the best idea you have, well, the presumable, I'm not sure how tall Dabra is, but the man looks a smooth 7 feet, who has you wondering if you could even move a muscle before him. The best thing to do is to yell and try to correct him while he's right there asking what's happening. Buddy, are you still, like, it was the exact same thing I felt when that guy was talking to me. I was like, you want, like, and who knows? Maybe the guy had a sticker. He backed down though. In that story, he backed down and he left. Like, they literally left the estate. We didn't see that guy again. Luckily enough, he didn't come back. I'm like, everybody's out. But that's like, he may have had something. Who knows? He may have been world champion, whatever. But there's like situational. There's sometimes where you don't speak. There's sometimes where you don't rage bait. And I remember asking my friends after, he's like, what even caused that? And it was like, oh, he had said something like wrong about some sports thing. Like, once again, he said something sports related that I didn't get. But apparently, like, it got the guy super duper mad. And then he, like, tried to take it out on my friend who got it wrong, apparently. I'm just like, are you dumb? Like, I don't know. I don't even want to fight someone who is my size or smaller. If I have to look up at you to yell at you, if I had to do that, I'm not yelling at you. Got it. You got it. It's that lack of situational awareness. And of course, Dabra, who was and I want to emphasize this. Dabra was nowhere near where Yakamaru is. I want you to pay attention. Dabra is back here. Yakamaru is right here by Usami. Dabra is here, surrounded by the Samurians, surrounded by the Rumelians, being told what happened. Yakamaru yells the very next second. The very, very, very same instant, Dabra has speed blitzed over there and says, was it you? Or are you the one who shot Cross? And naturally, suddenly, Mr. Big, Bad, and Bold is like, oh, yes? Boom! Oh, wait, no, not yet. No, it actually worked. Boom! Oh, arm gone! He was lucky that Dabra was feeling merciful. You know that brain would have been popped. I'm telling you, they lucky Dabra don't even like to fight like that. They're lucky. He didn't even move a muscle. And Yakamaru's arm is gone. Good for him. For someone who wanted smoke so bad, the second he saw the fire, he sure melted quick. And that is beautiful. But admittedly, the one core fundamental fumble. So why am I wielding one weird piece of Oathkeeper? Because it was like duct tape to this other broken piece of Oathkeeper, and like I have one, and like this is better to gesture with than this whole thing. But with that being the case, the one singular mistake that happens on someone's end is Usami here. As he hits the cage to reversal right behind Dabra, and then puts presumably his everything into a don't move. And we see it does seem to have like a effect on Dabra, but at the same time, the attack got off. Like I mentioned, Dabra speed blitzed over here and immediately punished Yakamaru for what he did before anything could happen. Like, unless this is like an erasure curse technique or whatever they call it, unless this is an erasure ability that Dabra has specifically, he presumably either moved and just like took his arm off or like blasted the curse. He did something in an instant so fast that Usami couldn't even get the reversal and the curse speech out quick enough. But even once hit with don't move, Dabra just like, it's like, and the reason I say that Usami made a mistake here is that if Dabra, like this could, all of this could be read as an action of aggression. This is the war thing that Yakamaru wanted, right? He wanted smoke so badly. This is this. If Dabra were a lesser man, not only would Yakamaru be dead, for one, like he would be splattered across the walls, but this is an act of aggression. What are you doing using your curse technique on me when I'm getting retribution for my people after your man shot him? And notably, unless Usami's don't move kicked in to stop like Yakamaru's actual death, which I don't think it did, considering Dabra isn't even affected by curse speech outside of, and Usami even notes he was too fast. You like this, especially as the human representative, right? Because we got to remember where Usami stands. Usami is essentially the equivalent to Jabaloma and Cross and Maru in that sense, where he is the communicator. He is the facilitation and the basis of communication. Him going on to, even if it's not an attack, but trying to enforce control over Dabra, someone who he's already admitted is an entirely different dimension than him, it's foolish on multiple levels. For one, it could just be a continuation of the international incident. Say this had worked, and then Dabra is paralyzed for like 2 seconds, and then he turns and is like, really? You try to restrain me? Okay. And then he just slaughters them all, right? But lucky enough for them, Dabra's lost a man. And two, he should know the drawbacks of curse speech, because he's a curse speech user. Why would he, who was already acknowledged that Dabra is in an entirely different dimension, even attempt to mess with him? Right? I know, like the whole point is, well, he wants to save Yakamaru. Yakamaru's not worth it. He's beyond saving at this point. Not only was he the one instigating, remember, Usami was fighting against Yakamaru's weird, bloodlusted intentions for the Sumerians anyway. But on top of this is like the worst thing he could have done. And we see it literally does take him out of commission, permanently for a little bit. And not permanently for a little bit, but we see that, as Usami admits, he was too fast. And once again, look at the distance he covered to reach here. He was standing back here amongst the Rumelians, then he's here, and just immediately annihilating Yakamaru. And we see that Yakamaru goes, the consequences of my actions, they're too strong. I don't know. And maybe, and this is maybe just a me thing, I think for how advanced we humans have become, war and conflict is fundamentally one of our most bestial and animalistic instincts that we still give into way too easily. Right? Like, what reason in our modern world is there for us to seek endless violence outside of greed and a weird base animalistic pleasure for conflict? I think there's nothing. Like, logically, what is the point? And in that very same way, I feel no pity for Yakamaru and anyone of his ilk who does seek violence and then beget, like notably, I understand the whole concept of like the cycle of hatred and how ultimately violence only perpetuates more violence and you shouldn't respond with violence. And that's why I don't mind Jabaloma even being like, Dabra, please restrain yourself. Where ultimately he just begged like, wait, please don't. And it's not even for the fact that if Dabra wanted to, right now, especially with Yuji not being found even by the end of this chapter, and a whole month passes in this chapter, mind you. So like, Yuji's nowhere near to be found. But would it be the case? Remember, if Dabra wanted to, he alone is supposedly a special grade tier sorcerer. If not beyond the sorcerer tiering system itself, as she says. He could just wipe out all of Japan. He'd probably get like a bomb nuclear dropped on his head eventually, but still, he alone is that powerful. He is the strongest, quote unquote, of this era, as far as we know, of the people who are contactable at least. And yet you wished to stand against him. I'm not sure, Yakamaru clearly didn't know about Dabra. I don't think he would have made the same decision if he did. But like, simply the idea that you wish to seek conflict with the people who've yet to seek conflict with you, if anything, who have been diplomatic enough to learn your language. They didn't even ask you to learn Rumelian, or whatever the Sumerian tongue is. No, they said, no, we'll learn your language, we will adapt to your customs, we will stay on this ship, we have the power to immediately annihilate you if the need be, but we will not do that. And yet you sought violence against them. It is so foolish. So foolish in Yakamaru's sense. I don't feel bad for him at all, as he thuds against the ground missing an arm. But, of course, we see that Usami, he's feeling a certain type of way, as his hand bursts, his other hand bursts, and his throat specifically begins, and he immediately coughs blood as sweat begins to run down his face. He's like, I didn't even use forceful words, and they already hit me this hard. And notably, we see that Dabra, he's like, outside the little crick, or the grick, he doesn't have any more forceful moving sound effects. He's just moving. As he says, was that an earthling curse technique? And notably, I do, is something, and that's the thing, Dabra's a fantastic character already, which is so insane to say, because he's barely had any time to be a character. But Dabra's a fantastic character in this way, because note how, one, Yakamaru's alive. Even though he was able to blitz over to Yakamaru, he could have easily moved him for once. So once again, that shows Dabra's restraint already, just innately, right? And blowing off Yakamaru's arm. But on top of that, he doesn't even, like I mentioned earlier, if Dabra took this as an act of aggression, every human here is gone. Fried immediately. But Dabra just isn't even into it. He's just like, oh, is that an earthling curse technique? What you just did to me? Which didn't have any effect at all? It's still very detached. And I think ultimately that's why Dabra still plays very well into the whole idea of the strongest, right? Because he's so far above it, and because it didn't even do anything to him, he's just like, oh, that's interesting, I suppose. It's that same sort of analytical style that Sukuna, ironically enough, takes. Where he's like, oh, that's a neat ability, how does that work? But he doesn't even ask how it works, he's just like, was that earthling curse technique? It's that specific disinterest, right? Where Sukuna, as the strongest, had interest in his own pleasures and the existence of he himself, and Gojo had his own pleasures in raising the next generation and teaching himself where it originally was living for himself when he was still a teenager and living with Geto. And Kashimo had just the hunger for some sort of purpose in it all, whether it be the pleasure of combat or something else, just something to give his strength meaning, essentially. Dabra is just so disconnected. He's like, nothing matters, but that's something. And I like that. It's a new interpretation. We keep seeing different interpretations of whatever it means to be the strongest of a certain era through certain characters. And I like Dabra's interpretation of it a lot. Because it's weirdly passive. It's weirdly passive for someone with that much power, but at the same time, I get it, right? Like, you turn me into a Kryptonian or give me, like, insane superpowers. I'm not suddenly trying to take over the world. I'm chilling. I just wouldn't do much. I wouldn't bother people. As long as they don't bother me or those I care for. But Dabra has a promise. He has a role to fill. And we see that as Yakamaru goes, oh, on the ground, someone says, you were too late, Usami. And naturally, we see Usami kind of get blitzed over to again. Once again, we're seeing how fast Dabra moves here. Well, maybe he could have just walked over here. But in this case, he appears before Usami, who's kneeling down. And he very specifically cracks his neck, understanding that, oh, well, I have a promise to keep. And clearly, they didn't keep their end of the deal. As he says, it looks like you're in pain. And very specifically, he's moving and moving. And we find out that it's a continuous effect, right? Ultimately, the recoil is never ending. As one of the other sorcerers says, he ignored Usami's cursed speeches, is moving around freely. And the other sorcerer says, not good. The more representative Dabra moves, the worse the cursed speech recoil gets. Because once again, he's overriding the technique. It is very interesting, though. That seems to have like a lot more of a long-lasting effect. And it goes to show, once again, the sheer gap in power between the two, right? Because remember, Inumaki was at least able to somewhat hold back Hanami, or then somewhat make other fellow relative characters to him run away. But in this case, not only is the curse technique effect lingering in terms of curse speech, but it's lingering and it keeps recoiling because Dabra's just fine. Since Usami hasn't, I suppose, been able to revoke the effects of the curse technique, he's still suffering. Which is another reason why curse speech is kind of bummy if you're not using it on characters who are infinitely more fodder than you. And we see ultimately that Usami has gone from, oh, I need to stop him from destroying Yakamaru, to, please forgive our rudeness. We deeply apologize for what happened to Dispatch Officer Cross. And my thing is, right? And I think this goes to show a fundamental difference between Dabra and me. But at the same time, I gotta put myself fully in that position. I actually do care about like Cross, and I like really like Cross as a person. Ultimately, I would take this as an act of war, right? Like very specifically, no matter what Usami says, especially very specifically the follow-up, right? I mentioned the idea of you going to try to immobilize me or use your abilities on me after, if anything, I was nice to your gentleman. I didn't even do anything. Once again, it's the idea of I simply appeared before him and yet you upped your weapon against me or you used your weapon on me. The same idea of how that plays into a lot of what happens today, where a person just simply needs to exist and seemingly do something before they're ultimately perishing. Remember, Usami moves and gets the reversal off way too late, before Yakamaru even gets anything off. Or before Dabra does anything to Yakamaru. Who knows, maybe Dabra's going to spare him. Probably not, but still. It's the idea of you harming one of my people. Like putting myself in Dabra's position, as me, myself, still. You harm one of the people I've been tasked to protect. Not just harm, lethally harm. Once again, the idea that you shot him twice in the torso. For what? For what? I'm sorry. You thought he was going to touch his weapon? Not a single one of you was harmed, outside of one slight scratch on your face. And you thought it was equal penance to slaughter one of the people I've been tasked to protect? And especially putting myself even further in that position. You attacked, essentially, the adoptive kids of my former best friend. Lethally. The man's probably going to die. And yet you come to beg me for mercy. You and your people transgress against me, and you come to beg at my feet after attempting to stop me with one of your weird abilities that I don't even like you using on me. And you come to me with, we deeply apologize for what happened to Dispatch Officer Cross. We're deeply, deeply sorry. But please, I'm begging you, disperse for now. Let's talk about this over. Let's talk over this at another time. Please give us another chance. And there is the idea of that Usami is getting so down on his knees, and he's crying, he's bleeding, and he's in agony. And he's looking at this. And very specifically, it's what Dabra says next that I do, admittedly, a weird, sick, twisted part of me agrees with, even though I don't think that's the thing. As much as I'm like, violence is bad, don't perpetuate the cycle of violence. I completely understand how, the cycle of violence gets perpetuated. As Usami goes, please, as he practically hurls blood. And Dabra says what I would see. Cross will die. He won't last long with those injuries. And Usami begs, we might be able to treat him, please! And Dabra simply says, there are 12, 13 of you. Not nearly enough. In exchange for Cross's life, I will take the lives of your subordinates. And honestly, Dabra, because I think, and I think that's why, and then it's a big issue that even I have just in real life, and I have worked on in many ways, but it is the reactive being in me that be like, clearly you want it, right? You want it so badly, I'll give it to you. And sure, 12 ain't much. How many humans are there? 8 billion? Go ahead. Since clearly you view us as animalistic beasts that can't be trusted, let me prove your theory. It's almost that reverse down. It's giving in. I would almost wish to prove you correct. You were right to be fearful of me, but clearly you were not scared enough. And let this be a there is that. And as much as I felt bad for being guilty by association, but darn gang, yeah. Remember, Cross is one of the two saviors of their people. Without Cross, it's very unlikely that Maru would be able to build the Now-Nox and then get them off the planet and out of the scenario. Dabra, in a way, despite being infinitely stronger than Cross and Maru, is still infinitely in debt to them. It's only for the fact that they were able to escape that very same night that Dabra was able to escape with his sister and give her a life where she doesn't have to worry about being captured and manipulated by the Deskunte in order to control Dabra. Cross has given Dabra and his sister a new lease on life while also saving the lives of 50,000 Rumelians. He is essentially the savior of their people. Half of it, regardless. On top of Dota's sacrifice. So honestly, 13 is not nearly enough. And in terms of just the idea, so I get where Dabra's coming from. And I get where Dabra's coming from. And I do respect his initial intentions. But I also respect even more, and why I think Dabra is such a fantastic character, is very specifically what happens when Usami says, please have mercy on us, and just take my life instead. The equivalent exchange. Or not, well really, the unequivalent exchange, where he's like, please, I will do anything, take my own life, spare them. And Dabra, looking down on Usami, looks into his eyes, and sees Dura. And that enough alone is to have him be like, we are returning now, Chabaloma. It is the idea that ultimately, the difference between someone like Asuka and someone like Dabra is that human connection does matter, did matter, and will matter. It holds weight in Dabra's heart of what his friend believed in, what his friend was willing to do. His best friend, his rival, the person who helped him rise to this level. He sees that in Usami. And simply that memory, and presumably also a mix of Dabra's own innate base instincts, not necessarily wanting to fight or be an executor of violence, and basically the freedom he is allowed by the nature of his power, that has him be like, you know what, fine. I will leave you in peace. For now. Even though you don't deserve it. And I respect that. I respect that. And it is a truly mature. And it's complicated, right? And I do have the question for y'all. How are you reacting in Dabra's situation? Cause I'll be honest, I'm taking more than an arm. I'm that guy. At least you're not right never again. Just to imagine how much that not to say that lives have different levels of value. Every life is valuable, but very specifically, just like in terms of contribution, Yakamaru did nothing but start an international incident. And Cross saved the lives of thousands of people. Man, it's real complicated. I'm not sure. Once again, I don't react with violence. Yeah. Once again, that's the issue, right? You're supposed to transcend and be free of the cycle of hatred. So, I don't know. It's a really rough thing. But with it being the case, we see Jabaloma go very well, and we see Dabra say something very important. He says, once again, it's the Kallions. The fundamental difference between the Romelians and everybody else. The reason why they had to be, quote unquote, had to be, really. It's not really had to be. But the reason why they were banished from their lands in the first place. The reason they were put into an scenario, the reason it was being pushed forward is because of their beliefs, because of their connection, because of the Kallions. And it is that nature. It's because of a fundamental part of their biology and their culture that they have been ostracized. And now they must ostracize themselves again. And it is truly a shame, because there is a solution that is very simple. A solution that gets brought up in this very chapter, in fact. And we see after the event, after Dabra leaves, he essentially spares Usami's life. Usami does thud against the ground. And the other sorcerers, or the other, because Mino's not a sorcerer. He's a window. But all the other people here, they come around Usami. And then we get a message from the Samudian representatives. We hereby request that the Japanese government prohibit any further extermination efforts and secure the safety of cursed spirits. And we see this woman, this grade 1 woman, say, there's no way we can do that. And it is a complicated, we'll get through. I'm going to do a little bit of reading, because we am for a little bit. We see, she says, the cursed spirits will leak out of Tokyo. And naturally, when the other people ask, is the barrier around Tokyo really that fragile? And the woman explains, originally it was a barrier centered around the old imperial palace, but then it was expanded all the way to the prefectural border. It's less about trapping cursed spirits inside the barrier and more so about diverting them to stay within it. And then we see the guy says, flyheads and low-level cursed spirits lingering on the edge of Tokyo are one thing, but what if a grade 2 or higher cursed spirits from deep within the inhuman Makyo escape from Tokyo? And the woman says, well, then we might have another Shibuya incident, like what happened prior to the Culling game. Which is an interesting comparison, because technically that is the case, but that was also caused by a curse user. That was Kenjaku. It was Kenjaku plotting with the disaster curses. Well, yeah, it is funky, but, and I won't go into the solution, because they're going to bring it up, and I'll talk about it there. But we see that ultimately, this older gentleman says, the one that idiot Yakamaru shot. Dispatch Officer Cross. Why can't we just treat him here? And we see the reverse curse technique user, who doesn't get a name, immediately explain, well, about that, sorcerers are all super tough. So as long as that's something too extreme, my reverse curse technique can bring them back, but... And what's too extreme? What's too extreme to you? And the woman admits, severe loss of tissue and internal organ damage. Dispatch Officer Cross is one of the top sorcerers representing his people. So for him to be incapacitated instantly like that could mean a vital organ was injured. Plus, and then the woman says, plus, if we take him in and then say, sorry, we can't heal him, that's not a good look. And, if the injury involves anatomy unique to Samudians, I'll be totally helpless. And naturally, the older gentleman says, darn you, Yakamaru, because this is all his fault. I think this the most important thing to remember. If Yakamaru just wasn't stupid, because that's I think that's the biggest point, right? I can not emphasize enough. If it's all Yakamaru's fault for being stupid, for letting his own bloodlust control him in that moment, it's his fault that they're in this scenario. I cannot get over the fact that 2 chapters ago we were eating takoyaki together. And now we're on the brink of a war by the very end of this chapter. It's been less than 24 pages. And we're at the brink of war, admittedly because of, and I think that's the complicated thing, right? I'm sitting here like, Yakamaru was an idiot, but Yakamaru was human. You know? That's the thing. It's still good writing. Like, and notably, I could see someone complaining, the pace shot up way too quickly. Someone says, okay, remember, this is a short-run manga and now wants to end it real quick. That doesn't make any sense. But not only have the tensions between humans and Samurians been there since the very beginning, like since chapter 1, but on top of that, there is the whole idea of just human nature. And I think it is a sad thing, right? It always hurts me to say that once you break humans down to the most fundamental, one of the most core base aspects of us is, strangely enough, our like never ceasing, unending need for violence of some sort. It's there. Like I said, if you look into it, there's more than enough wealth and resources and food and space on the planet to safely house all 8 billion, soon to be 9 billion people on the planet. There was enough resources. It's easy. There are multiple different studies from financiers to economists, all that. Like, it's more than feasible that everyone could be living happy, healthy lives, yet there's still mass human suffering. And there's still mass human conflict. There's still massive wars raging on and have been raging on. Why? Because so many people down to the fundamentally course are just violent, rabid animals. And ultimately, that's what Yakamaru is. He was a violent, stupid, rabid animal who felt like he was better than everybody. Better than these foolish refugees that come to us. Why do we have to fold to them? And like I mentioned, the allegory of what Yakamaru is meant to represent, right? The idea of, oh, he's reaching for his weapon, and that was more than enough. That was more than enough justification to take his life, I guess. Even though he clearly wasn't. Yeah. I'm not saying Gege needs to be slick about it, because I know what that is. For good reason. But, with that being the case, it is that human nature that can also lead to a spark of events that goes down just like this. As we see, the girl explained, plus, since we're the ones who injured him, if we turn around and save him too, they might think we staged it for our own benefit or something. And it's not like they'll say, oh yeah, forget about the cursed spirits thing anyway. And that is all very true. And we see the old man say, I'm aware of that. And she says, I'm sorry. And the woman says, how long can we wait to exorcise the cursed spirits in Tokyo? And Mino says, well, especially now that the Great Purification Ritual has been suspended, I think a month is our limit. And 1 month later, a whole month passes. Notably, we don't see Usami for the rest of the chapter, by the way. He also seems to be deep fried. We don't see Maru for the rest of the chapter, we don't see Usami for the rest of the chapter. But we cut to a month later, December 2086. And it's always December, man. It's always December in this manga. Shinjuku Shodown was December, we're now in December. But, with being the case, we see a man say, exercising cursed spirits at night is too dangerous. And the other guy says, can't help it. No one's been able to do a thing for a whole month. So all we can do is exercise the curses without the Samurians finding out. And we see that one of Osuki's friends asks, hey, can we really tell from this distance? As clearly they are high in the atmosphere. And we see that Osuki, who's very well built, says, send your awareness below us, in Tokyo, Japan. Don't worry, the damage from the tears is minimal. You should be able to hear them, even from this distance. The cries of the cursed spirits. The cries of Earth's Kallions. And you see Osuki begin to cry extensively from his eyes. But once again, it isn't like he's not getting brain damage from this. He's able to take it. But with it being the case, we see that because they've gone right back to soldering. In fact, multiple months pass. I forgot that we leaped to January as well. But multiple months pass. And I want you to remember, Yuko only had 6 months left to live. That's a big point. Remember that. Yuko only had 6 months to live. And we see that another message comes from the Samurians. As it says, a message from the Samurian representatives. We hereby designate the mass slaughter of cursed spirits as an international crime and therefore demand the Japanese government take international responsibility. And then the Japanese government responds with, the exorcism of cursed spirits constitutes an act of Modulo. Hold on. I'm going to look this up. I should have looked it up after the live reaction, which you get over on Patreon for those 1 month. You can remember for the theaters, it's about 23 minutes. But, what is this? Majure? Majuru? Majeru? Majeru? Modulo is a part of the French phrase force majeure, which translates to superior force and refers to unexpected, unavoidable event that prevents parties from fulfilling a contract. These events are beyond anyone's control and include natural disasters like earthquakes or hurricanes. Okay. So essentially they're saying, like, we have to do it because it would cause too many problems if we didn't. So, like, womp womp. It's not like, they're not actually saying, like, womp womp, but essentially they are being like, we have to do it no matter what. Doesn't matter if you don't like it. And we see that ultimately the sorcerers begin to argue. It's no use. We must perform the great purification ritual properly. And another says, there's only so many exorcisms we can do in secret. We have to wait. And we see that presumably the same person says, wait, could you still say that if you went out in the field too? And then the other person presumably says, cursed spirit manifestations spike in the winter, and the level of danger rises along with it, especially with exorcisms done at night. We're at our limit. And we see many different sorcerers have been hospitalized. And I need you to remember that the last chapter was talking about how they don't have enough sorcerers as is. So sorcerers consistently getting hospitalized and diffed in the Inhuman Machina was actually really, really bad. And we see even 2 months later, or seemingly like, literally 2 months later, Osuki's still been in that exact same spot, presumably on the bottom of the Nalnox, listening in and crying directly from his eyes. And now, even his friends are like, Osuki, even if the burn is minimal, you shouldn't keep shedding tears from your third eye like this, because it's not healthy for their people. And we see that Osuki says, stop it! I'm going to listen to their voices. This is the very least I can do as a Rumelian warrior. And that's very, very true, right? They ultimately have been a little bit purposeless. And I still don't know if that great Kallion that, like, gives them their middle names and stuff like that, in terms of whether or not they're going to be a warrior, we don't know if that's on the ship. We haven't met it yet. It could be there. Could be Mahito, I'm kidding. But, like, it could be there. But, with that being the case, we see that Osuki, in spite of the clear evidence that they're not Kallions by the nature of his very biology, is like, how can they kill Kallions? If only they could hear their voices, then. Though I do wonder, like, it's because I forget how long Jogo says it would take for them to return. But, like, I want to, well, I'll get to it in a second. They're about to get to it. And I'll talk about the hypothetical solution that I would go with if I was the Japanese government and clearly knew that they have a living, breathing calamity walking around with them that could easily decide to drop on us, especially considering we keep breaking their simple demands. For a good reason, admittedly, but still, their simple demands. Osugi says, how can they keep you in Kallions if only they could hear their voices? And Dabra simply came along and said, that's enough. Please. It's not worth it. And naturally, Osugi goes, Dabra! I bet you can't hear the Kallions' voices either, huh? After all, you're nothing but a Deskunte outsider. And notably, Dabra doesn't get insulted by this. He takes it, he turns, and he leaves. And he says, I'm sorry, Jabaloma. But Osugi's right. I am nothing but a Deskunte warrior. It is still a fundamental difference, right? The Dabra he's not the same. And he cannot understand their pain, but he can respect their wishes. And ultimately, despite how much Dabra clearly despises his own culture to a degree, because of what it did to him and what it forced him to do to someone he deeply cared about, since he has been put in the position only a Deskunte warrior can handle and offer, he has been forced to take on the piece of his culture that once ruined his life. As we get another message from the submarine representatives. We have confirmed the continued mass slaughter of cursed spirits. Therefore, to ensure their protection, we shall hereby establish a new government and new nation of Rumel within Tokyo. Should this be refused, we request judgment through a duel, as is the way of the Deskunte. He goes back to the fundamental idea. And remember, this is the whole reason they had to run. This is the whole idea of, like, you become your oppressors after a little bit. Though, admittedly, I still would say the Rumelians have been going through it for something that's far beyond their control. But it's that idea, right? Remember, the idea of a specific group of people expanding and taking over an area was the main reason why the Rumelians lost their land in the first place. And why they had to flee in the first place. It's the idea that they lost their homeland, and thusly they were forced into smaller and smaller areas, and they simply could not maintain that. All because of the difference about Kallions. And now the difference about Kallions has come clear, and it's clear that they are continuing the slaughter of cursed spirits in spite of the Submarians' request. And honestly, their mercy, Usami and all of his men, including Mino, could be fried right now if Dabra wasn't feeling merciful. All of Japan could be taken over. Realistically, giving them Tokyo, which is uninhabitable in the first place, isn't even a bad move. And I'll get into what my plan would be, or my response would be, well before this 2-month time skip, but even still, the discussions are going on. We note how Usami is not here, and Mino looks very tired, but someone says, I told you they'd find out. Why would you make us take that risk, especially a risk like that, and ask for exorcisms at night? And note, another person says, just give them Tokyo already. Who cares? And that is my biggest thing. Because here's the thing about giving them Tokyo. Not only is it already uninhabited, but by giving them Tokyo, not only do you give them a base of operations to stay at and do their own thing in their own land, meaning they don't have to live with the Naonox anymore, and you can still maintain communications, but also, you don't have to restrain them to Tokyo. In fact, you can't. Literally, if Dabra says, I'm leaving, what are you going to do? So, like, by giving them Tokyo, it can do one of two things. Either one, the cursed spirits and the Rumelians there can live in a harmony. If that cursed spirit from last chapter truly was not going to Onosuke ever, right? It was like, it truly was just, but Kallion, or at least it was like shifting into or being to manifest like a Kallion, that could be fine. And they just live together, they dab each other up, and they keep pushing. Or they could see the true nature of cursed spirits. I brought up Jogo earlier, let me bring him up again. Do you think Jogo would spare the Rumelians? I don't think so. Do you think Mahito would spare the Rumelians? I don't think so. Hanami, Dag, I don't think so. But they are intelligent curses capable of communication. But I think that is the important fundamental difference that Osuki is understanding because of his biological link and his culture, which I don't blame him for, because there are cultural differences, and it's because of their lack of exposure. If they want to protect and care about cursed spirits so much, then let them live with them. And if the cursed spirits are good, and in fact do work and live with them, fine. That's actually a good thing. That means you now have, who knows how many Rumelian warriors there actually are, but you now have a whole legion of warriors handling the quote-unquote Great Purification Ritual for you, and making sure the Kallions stay within their respective area. If they aren't Kallions, they're cursed spirits. You have them staying within their respective area, and the worst comes to worst, if the Kallions start randomly attacking Rumelians, they will then learn, oh, they were right. These aren't Kallions. Oh. All right, yeah, we're probably gonna start that. Like, because ultimately, the big thing about cursed spirits is that they're kind of like a third party right now. The three groups we all have right now are the Samurians, the humans, and the cursed spirits. The big issue that the Rumelians have right now, because of the nature of their culture and the very specific lack of time they have to actually live and explore in Tokyo, is that they can't find out about the true nature of cursed spirits, at least not through first-hand experience. Imagine what Dabra and Jabaloma and Cross and Mar and all of them would do if they found out a cursed spirit ate a Rumelian child that trusted it. Because like, oh, it's a Kallion. I hear its voice. And the voice says, come here, kid. I have a gift for you. And it just bites its head off. I think that would be more than enough proof that, oh, wait, no, cursed spirits are just evil. They're convergent evolution. They look like Kallions. They may even sound like Kallions. They are not Kallions. And then that's fine. Then you can work with them to either complete the Great Purification Ritual, or they can take care of it themselves, as they are warriors, which are essentially sorcerers. The idea that we're gatekeeping all of Tokyo, when the whole point is that Tokyo is the problem in the first place, kill two birds with one stone. Give them Tokyo, let them either take care of it or not, or find out that they can't take care of it, and ball out. But they refuse to ball out. And I think it is, once again, a strange matter of pride. And on top of, there is some issues with it, and I'll get into those issues as they talk about it, as they say, and what will we do about the cursed spirits? They're one step away from leaking out all over Japan. And we see, and the person says, plus, if we separate where we're living, that's nothing but segregation. It might solve the problem now, but it'll cause nothing but problems for the future generations. And this is, funnily enough, because I literally just watched a series of Magi videos by a fantastic content creator. I only subscribe to them every day. I forget what the content creator was, but they made a fantastic video about Magi. And one thing that I think that they brought up that clicks with me so much, and very specifically is the flaw of both Sinbad and Koen, is this idea, this broad idea of the future, right? And don't be wrong, the future is happening every instant. Every single second I speak, every single time I plan to speak, the future becomes the present, which then becomes the past, and goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on. But one of the biggest flaws of Sinbad, one of the biggest flaws of Koen, is that they focus so far in this deep, broad, idealized version of the future that they miss the forest for the trees. Or really, in this case, I suppose they miss the trees for the forest. The forest is the future. It's this grand, broad, strapping ideal that branches out and covers everything. But right now, you don't have the luxury to worry about the future. You have to worry about the present right now. And notably, Sure, it'll affect the future generations, but let that be their problem. You need to solve this now so it can be a problem for future generations. Once again, they are lucky that Dabra and the other Samorians have not decided, you know what, we're going to come down and just do it freeballing. They're lucky that Dabra himself just hasn't shown up to the Jujutsu headquarters and been like, run my fade right now. He's still being polite about it in many ways. He's still being very, very patient for a group of people who blink down one of his saviors. And we don't know if Cross is alive, mind you. He may have perished. It's been 2 months. We have no idea. It's been 2 months in the universe. But all that being the case, I think this, in the very same way to how this focus on worry for the future, while it is important, I do like how it goes to show how much of society has changed, right? Where they didn't really care about the future, it's all reverence and care for the past. I think what now needs to be focused on is the present and the possible coexistence, and if not possible coexistence, the benefits that could come from having faith in the Samorians and the Romelians and their people to either handle the problem themselves or if not, give them the problem and see how they solve it. Because they supposedly have experience with this. If they can work with cursed spirits, good. If they can't, then we work together to eliminate them. That seems like the most easy, clear-cut, and coherent solution. And it's a shame that ultimately, these things just don't work. Because we see they don't do it. And ultimately, I think that, it'll probably promise us now because it's future generation. No, if we separate where we live, that's nothing but segregation. And I think the most important thing is that they can have Tokyo, because it's already an abandoned land. They can take it. But they don't limit them to Tokyo. Let the Samorians leave. Let the Samorians do whatever they want. They clearly already leave the ship whenever they want. So let them leave Tokyo. If they want to explore, let them explore. That's fine. You don't have... It's only segregation if you prevent them from leaving. But if you give them Tokyo, allow them to establish a new colony there, since it's already basically gone anyway, you can then let them go. I feel like that's once again applying a problem to a solution just to make sure you can't apply the initial solution. But we see that ultimately one of the guys says, "But that's what they want." And Mino says, "Yes, but the cursed spirits." And the woman from before says, "Pipe down already. Nominating anyone but Yuji Itadori to duel Dabra would be out of the question." Speaking of, I did see an idea. Technically, Dabra does not nominate himself for the duel. It just says, should this be refused, we request judgment through a duel as a way to escalate. Dabra himself isn't meant to duel, so that's why my baby may be annihilated. But still, we're not entirely sure. But we see that the woman is just like, it's too late now. We've already committed to the bit. It's dueling time because they just refuse to give up Tokyo. I would give up Tokyo. I don't know. Tokyo now at this point holds so little value and it's just a problem. Give it to the Samorians. I don't care. But maybe that's me just being too accommodating. As the woman asks, nominating anyone but Yuji Itadori to duel Dabra would be out of the question. Speaking of, did you get a hold of him? And Mino says, no, not at all. No clue on his whereabouts either. And we can see how tired Mino has become, presumably from all the stress. And I assume he's basically become the new Usami. Well, Usami's still presumably recovering from his cursed speech backlash. And we get a testimony from Miss Kugasaki, who is still alive and well. Seemingly very well off. That she's in a high-rise apartment, has a cat, and is chilling. But we have a testimony that says, the last time I saw him was at Hana's funeral. Which is crazy to think about. I wonder, does that imply that Yuji didn't go to Yuta and Maki's funerals? Or does that imply that Hana died even before those two? I'm not sure, but Nobara does say that. Last time I saw him was at Hana's funeral. He said he wouldn't be going to any more funerals. He might look like a musclehead, but he's surprisingly sensitive, He just can't bear to see anyone else off. I don't think he ever imagined not being able to fulfill his grandfather's dying wish like this. And this is the most important thing. And I will readily clap my heels together and be like, well, I was 100% wrong. So I'm proud for everyone who's able to read it in a way I thought wasn't there, but y'all were right. As she says, it was getting a little rough on me too, though. She caresses the cat and says, after all, he can't age, So every time I saw him, I was painfully aware of just how old I've gotten. And that's fine, but he always looks like he feels so bad about it. That's the thing I can't stand. So, if you happen to see him, leave him a message for me. Don't look down on me, idiot. And she clicks the end of the recording. So, Yuji is actually technically ageless. He doesn't age. That was something that I was heavily against. because I thought, like, I didn't think there was really any precedent for it. Because everyone used, well, he has Choso's biology, and Choso's half cursed, so he's eternal, right? I just thought that Choso, like, lived 150 years because he was never actually given a physical form. He was never allowed to age, he was kept in stasis. But no, Yuji is immortal. Like, not literally immortal, he can clearly still die. But, like, for all intents and purposes, Yuji is timeless. He will forever outlive and age. And leave it to Gege to torture his main character, even beyond the end of his main character series. Maki gets to live happily. And Maki and Yuta get to live happily, have kids, have a good life, and then move on peacefully before all the chaos starts. Yuji, nope, that boy's still eternally, I guess, what, 15? Did he even turn 16? I don't think so. I think he's just fried. He's stuck. Forever. Eternal. Bound in a physical form as he watches everyone he knows and loves dies around him. And that really is unfortunate. And I think what's also unfortunate is that, one, we didn't get to see it happen. And two, it does feel, like, part of me does feel a little bit out of character that Yuji would just abandon everybody like this. Like, clearly he has it. He's presumably still going around doing his thing. But what is he doing now? Clearly he was interacting with curse users. We see him interact with Takada, or he had interacted with Takada when Takada was younger. But, like, why is he not why did he not leave any contacts? What does he, like, I get the idea that he feels the pain of connection and the curse of immortality, right? Where, like, ultimately everyone you know and love will age and die around you, and he doesn't want to meet anybody else. But, like, does he not feel, I don't know, it's interesting he doesn't feel any, like, not responsibility feels like the wrong word, but I guess it is the most appropriate word. He doesn't feel any, like, responsibility to those who he's leaving behind. Like, if anything, I understand Yuji just wanting to be alone, right? And not wanting to go to any more funerals and not wanting to have to see his friends age and die around him. And notably, we don't know if Megumi's dead. Only Hana is. But I'm shocked he didn't leave a way for them to contact him. In case something like this happened. In case a Sugana level threat appeared again. Or in case, like, something that they couldn't handle. Like, the idea that Yuji's on the sidelines and kind of just letting people die or go through extreme suffering in mass, all these sorcerers, when he could presumably handle the Great Purification Ritual by himself in a few days if he really needed to, and or just could be reachable in case things went bad, I do feel like that is a bit out of character. Especially for a guy who, like, who, if anything, was intent on continuing Gojo's legacy, right? If anything, you would think that Yuji would do this is gonna sound really bad. This almost feels like a Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy-esque character ruining, but it doesn't make sense because Gege wrote both characters. Like, you could just argue this is part of Yuji's character arc in Modulo, but it does feel weird. Represented the Remelian tribe of somewhere should have challenged a duel for the purpose of safeguard. Oh, so never mind. It is confirmed to be Dabra. I don't know why I read people saying it wasn't Dabra. That was wrong. So, like, log entry to January 2087. Dabra Karaba. But it does feel a little weird because Gojo left Yuji with the role like, hey, you raise the next generation. You take care of them. You lead the way like I led the way for you. And Yuji was seemingly very happy to do that in the final chapters of JJK. And I suppose you could just argue like that motivation couldn't last forever, especially as he lost everyone around him and could never fulfill his grandfather's wish because he became immortal. But, like, Yuji going on a self-moping arc and not, like, being there and helping raise, well, not raise, but, like protect and guide and safeguard the next generation of sorcerers does feel a little bit, it feels a little bit weird. I'm not sure how I feel about that from a character writing standpoint. It doesn't really feel right, I will admit. Well, at the same time, I don't know. There's also just, the complications of an existence like Yuji's, right? Where ultimately maybe he was doing that for years upon years upon years, but then saw that the system wasn't fully changing. But then again, I don't know. I feel like Yuji would never give up. It truly is the Luke Skywalkerification, or the sequel trilogy Skywalkerification of Yuji, where, like, he wouldn't have just given up because it was hard or difficult, and he wouldn't have, like, abandoned everybody just because he was losing people. I don't know. It does feel weird. And with the way the narrative's rushing at the rate it does definitely feel like at this point you shouldn't have even had Yuji around. He shouldn't have been something to call on, because he clearly isn't call-onable. Maybe he'll show up at the perfect time, I guess, but still, I feel like he should have left some form of connection or reach to somebody. And he should be involved. I don't know, it does feel weird that he's so disconnected, when his whole point at the end of the narrative was essentially becoming the new Gojo and being that font of connection. The whole idea, like, one of the last films we see of Yuji is him telling somebody, I believe in you. It's the idea that he sees people doing wrong and thinks they could do better, so he's there to help people do better and grow better. So it's really unfortunate. And this also implies that he just doesn't keep in contact with people. Like, obviously, who knows, maybe Nobar, maybe like he requested, hey Nobar, don't tell JJK Society where I am. You have my number. Like, it does feel weird that, like, he doesn't even keep in contact with his friends anymore. It's like, oh, you're gonna perish one day, and that's unfortunate. But, like, notably, another, and that's, I actually feeling really conflicted about this, because, like, the big thing he tells Sukuna is that the value of a human life isn't determined by, like, how it ends or how strong it is. It's, like, what you do with that. So if anything, you would think that Yuji would want to spend as much time with Nobara as possible, spend as much time with Megumi, spend as much time with his friends, and not leave them behind. The fact that he just walks away from Nobara, it does feel weird. And this is one of the things where I'm like, something that you guys think about how this characterizes Yuji, because I kind of don't like it. I get why, though. If you're going to make him immortal, you can't have him be a part of the narrative. But at that point, you still make him immortal. It's kind of funky. But, with that being the case, it's nice to know that Nobara's alive. It is also nice to know that she still is Miss Kukusaki. She never ended up, at least this implies, unless she just outlived her husband, W Nobara moment, or outlived her wife, W Nobara moment, regardless. Or she just kept her last name, W Nobara moment, regardless. She does seem to be alone. I feel bad for her, because Yuji could be there with her. So, like, it is a little bit rough on Yuji's end for the Federation part. Nobara's characterization is fine, though. She got her bag, she got her money up, she presumably helped out when she could, and she kept it pushing. That I respect, and that does fit her character. But Yuji's character, not like assassinated, but it does feels off. Once again, it's like that off-screen character arc thing where I'm like, not sure how much I feel about that, or how much I like it. But we naturally see Mino, who still has the bags under his eyes, is like, oh, so it is all over then, huh? And the woman says, no, we do have one last hope. It's up to her, though. And we have the final log entry. Log entry, January 2087. Dabra Karaba, representative of the Rumelian tribe of Samuria, issued a challenge to a duel for the purpose of safeguarding her spirits and demanding the relinquishment of Tokyo. And we see who accepted. Japan, acting as Earth's representative, chose Yuka Okotsu to fight on its behalf, and she accepted. So, Yuka seems to be the one that's going to duel Dabra, which is why I'm so worried about my baby girl. But, note Yuka's appearance here. She seems a lot more Yuta-esque in terms of the lack of joy, the sallowness, and just like a resignation. Almost as a resignation for her own death. And I wonder, remember, she had supposedly 6 months to live. And clearly the one external RCT user we've seen so far, the Nameless Woman, if she can't heal vital organs, she definitely can't heal whatever unique sickness that Yuka has. So Yuka has only 4 months to live now at this point. And to see her essentially guaranteedly throw her life away, darn does it hurt. Darn does it hurt. But I think once again, it'll be that idea of connection. And I think Yuka, who's kind of been like the foundational point for connection between Samurai, she is the point of Cross's understanding, right? The whole reason Cross was even willing to give humans a chance in the first place isn't even because Maru wanted to, isn't because of Tsurugi. It's a combination of those two, and very specifically Yuka reaching out to him and asking, how much are you going to take? How much are you going to do? Are you willing to become your oppressors to be better than them and live your life? And Cross just couldn't. He's like, no, I can't do that. And I think Yuka's going to try to appeal to Dabra in the same way. But I think the big thing, and the complicated thing, and the one thing I'm most interested to see Yuka attempt to overcome next chapter and in the duel, is she's going to have to win while she's wrong. Ultimately, it was the humans who instigated the battle against the Samurians. It was the humans who held back information on cursed spirits. It was a human who shot Cross and possibly killed him. Once again, we don't know if he's alive by the end of this chapter. We don't get an update on that. It was humans who forced a conflict that did not have to be a conflict. They did all that. And now Yuka's going to have to fight their fight for them. A woman, not even 17 at this point, is going to have to throw her life on the line against a being so transcendental that he makes a grade 1 sorcerer fall without ever even touching him. And curses him to the point where he looks like this after using his own ability on him. Yuka's going to fight that? I don't think so. I've seen Hope and Cope that she's going to have like some super secret powerful curse technique. She's going to somehow summon Rika. There's going to be some weird way that she's going to be able to clutch him. No, I don't think so. Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo doesn't seem to be a battle manga in the same way that JJK was. It seems to be a manga about beliefs and understanding in a way that JJK wasn't. And I'm hoping with the bottom of my heart that Yuka can reach some sort of understanding. But I wish her the best of luck, because it's going to be a very, very hard battle. But of course, that's what I think. Please tell me what you... Well, let me talk about the chapter as a whole. I still think, ultimately... Sorry, that was a little weak. Why the chapter's worthy. I like, specifically, Maru. Maru, despite having only 2 pages of the entire chapter, in fact, literally what? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 whole panels. His reaction, his confusion, his loss, and very specifically the final face he makes, it all feeds this idea of that possible guilt he feels and the complication he feels behind their existence. And the focus of very specifically on neighborhood that has always been within the character's veins ever since Dabra or Dora took them in. And the complications that go behind that. I love Osaki's character in this chapter, from his belief to his disbelief, and his belief in Cross and his respect for him, yet and his disbelief in his possible death, to also the belief in cursed spirits as Kallions, even though he does know that's fundamentally wrong. He's willing to put himself on the line because ultimately he feels he's defined by what he does not have, right? He's defined by a lack of purpose to protect the Kallions as a warrior, and thusly he goes on to simply torture himself with the cursed spirits. It's unfortunate, but still, it's there. Tsurugi, once again, only gets 3 whole panels, and I like how he is in so much shock, and ultimately he just comes to this point of understanding that Dabra is something fundamentally different. And Usami, going through it as much as he has, and making what I believe is a wrong move, I think that's purposeful. I think it's a good thing that he makes the wrong move here, because stuff like this is complicated. It's not easy. And seeing him try to run in and save the life of his subordinate, and very specifically be willing to sacrifice his life exclusively for his subordinates, is very, very nice. How that reminds Dabra of Dora is very, very nice. And this is a Dabra chapter for all his purposes. We see his power, we see his presence, we see his mercy, we see his patience, we see his impatience, we see his understanding and lack thereof of his own people, the people he's been tasked with protecting because of their difference in natures, and how ultimately he gives them the chance to do better, gives them the chance to be better, all because that's what Dora would have wanted. And of course, to see humans squander that chance through their greed, through their impatience, through their desire for the future, all those complications are once again very, very good. It's just that this is such a chapter just full of good character writing and human interaction and human, like realistic human discussion and stuff that would occur. And of course, there is the final pieces of this, the idea of Dabra giving into his culture, Dabra giving into the possibility of the duel, the return of Nobara, and the weird, admittedly, characterization for Yuji I need to think on more. All this chapter is just so full of great stuff. So ultimately, if you've been all the way to this video, please leave nowhere to go in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you have a Patreon down below. Use word me for as low as $1. Get them one. Get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include live reactions to other series I have to review, ad reactions of all my videos, and you become a $12 Patreon and $12 member. You can order whatever video you want. Also, you get access to all early ad-free videos, not just for this channel, but also the second channel, That Guy with a Reaction, which will be linked in the description down below. Those videos range from as short as like 45 minutes to as long as 2 hours long. You get early ad-free access to all those well in advance in comparison, because those only drop 1 p.m. every Saturday, EST. And then on top of that, there is the fact that you get your name listed at the end of literally every single video that I produce on this channel or the second channel. It will, and if you are a $3 member or higher, you get your name read aloud, not just listed at the end of every single video. And on top of that, if you want to just drop 5 minutes for a short video or 25 minutes for a long video, the link to my Ko-Fi is in the description down below. And I want to thank you so much for watching. As you could possibly check out the 23-minute live reaction to this very chapter. But I want to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off. Alright, lady, thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Guillomy, Buddha Uda, Enzo, Swift Strike, Superflame Zero, Yuki Ally, Azo2404, Striker Man, Grim, Ollie, Da Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, CCC, Armando Furen, Dino, Heath Nelson, Hector Gonzalez, Black Sage, Zapro, Tim Thomas, Alex Kenny, Kaving, Julian Perez, 8SOA, Akulade Babatunde, Union I, RXN, Nevis97, Sheesh King, Logan Guzman, Karina Hernandez, Window Life, Dead Meme, Karudir, Reyna, Christian Carter, Jagoda, Keon Stewart, Donovan McIntosh, Sino King, and Hamza Idrisi. Then, I'd like to give thank you to our line art tier patrons: A+A, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Dreads Owen, and Norgazi Andasov. Then, I'd like to give thank you to our ink tier members: King RTX and Shrimpo the 4 Shrimp 06. And I'd like to give thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Walking Munoz and Walking Munoz.